It's crazy how Gwen has basically had 3 different boyfriends in the official canon over the course of 5 total drama seasons, and none of those 3 guys were the guys she was originally planned to be with.
Can I have some?
Get your own.
Obviously, shipping and drama stemmed from relationships has played a huge part in not only the individual plots for certain total drama seasons, but even carrying into multiple seasons depending on the relationship, like Sean and Jasmine being exclusive to Pakatu, while Lindsay's relationship with Tyler started in Island, and they're still presumably going strong to this day. Those 2 I'd say are more positive examples of ships amongst this giant cast of characters, Sean and Jasmine being the big highlights of Pakatu for me personally, sharing a lot of common interests in being general badasses and challenges, while Lindsay and Tyler were consistently funny together. Sure, they didn't get as much focus as some others, but they still work and are entertaining to watch since the other characters involved bounce off each other quite well. Gwen, on the other hand, didn't really have the same luxury with her different relationships. Gwen quickly became a fan favorite total drama character upon her introduction, and I'm sure was the reason a lot of people out there awakened their love for Goth Woman. I am definitely one of those people. But the way Total Drama handled her relationships with both Trent and Duncan was not the best in the world in my opinion. Hell, I feel like even people who still like either of those pairings would agree at least some aspects could have been handled better. But what if Gwen actually ended up with Jeff instead of ending up with Bridget? Whoops, wrong Geoff. I'm not sure how that little guy got there, my apologies. Even though I'm not the biggest shipping aficionado in the world, my boy Sarcastic is the king in that aspect, Total Drama has been the one show I've slightly delved into in my free time in regards to ships. Even made a video a couple years back on Sean x Jasmine. So in this video, I wanted to go over the bit of history between these 2 characters before the official release of the show, as well as in the show, on top of speculating how certain events could have changed if they ended up together from the get-go or were just closer friends. Let's get into it.
See how mortified Gwen is? Well, this is what she's going to look like when she learns the truth.
Honestly, maybe I'm not actually as tapped into this fandom as I thought I was, but it feels like this is a ship I almost never see people talk about, or a pairing I never see talked about, at least in the present day, which I guess is somewhat understandable. For a lot of the folks who are still actively involved with the show, most of the focus seems to have shifted away from the original cast onto the reboot cast. And you know, honestly fair. It's the newest cast, and they're a pretty solid cast to boot. That's just kind of the natural order of things. A new shiny thing comes along, people will want to pay more attention to it if it's got the substance to back itself up. Only until the next new shiny thing comes along to take its place. A pretty common cycle when it comes to, media in general. Even still, when it comes to ships that are still involved with older Total Drama characters, I'd say I see more people shipping Gwen with Courtney than with Jeff. Or, Noah and Owen together. But to be fair, we might as well make that canon at this point. Emma will be fine, she'll be fine. Jeff wasn't necessarily my favorite character in the world in Island either. I liked him and thought he was pretty funny and all. He just never reached that same level of likability for me as other male characters like Owen or Duncan at the time. It wasn't until Action Onward where the writers tried to flesh him out a bit more and make him a bit of a less one-dimensional party hype man, thus intriguing me to the idea of a reality where he and Gwen could have actually ended up together, or stayed closer friends. Plus, Jeff was already more likable to me than Trent ever was before Jeff's roles in Action, World Tour, and Ridiculous Race, whereas Duncan was still mostly fine with his relationship with Gwen initially began, but it really did feel like the show forced them together for the sole purpose of creating a drama-filled love triangle / because Gwen and Duncan are the punked goth characters of that generation, and because they're so similar, they have to be together type shit. And so for those who may not be aware, the original plan for the Gwen and Jeff characters in Total Drama's first season was for them to be one of the main couples. Yeah, this thumbnail isn't fan art or anything, it's from an official teaser trailer of Camp TV, the original name for Total Drama Island. What's even crazier is promotional art for Camp TV were implying the older versions of both Gwen and Trent were going to hate each other, as seen in this picture of 8 of the old characters canoeing on a waterfall, where Gwen and Trent are both strangling each other with angry faces. For them to take such a 180 with their dynamic is very interesting. Obviously, when shows are in their early stages of development, certain character designs, plot points, or even voice actors can change, evident by the fact that while Jeff looks basically the exact same as in the final version, Gwen was noticeably different, sporting red hair instead of green and black, on top of wearing cropped jeans instead of a skirt. But this still felt like an incredibly drastic change when the 2 characters in question are going from bitter enemies to one of the main couples of the first season. I looked into Camp TV's development / changes that were made and didn't find any specific quotes or anything from the staff as why the dynamic between these characters changed. But if I had to guess, maybe they felt like they wanted more couples represented once more and more characters got added to the cast, eventually resulting in Jeff being paired with Bridget, where they felt more reliable together than if Bridget was paired with Trent, for example. I could be completely wrong though, but unless it's brought up in one of those Q&A sessions with Jennifer Persh and Tom McGillis, then a concrete answer will more than likely never be given to the public. Gwen and Jeff's interactions would be far and few in between throughout most of Total Drama Island, as the the two of them would be placed on different teams for the first half of the season. Most total drama romances begin with characters being put on the same team, Lindsay and Tyler being the only exceptions when it comes to other season 1 couples. The only interactions we really got between them in the first half were in Basic Straining and Extreme Torture, where the two of them were the last two standing in the Basic Straining episode, upside down in a tree challenge, throwing in some playful taunting before Geoff lost.
It feels so good.
And in Extreme Torture, where Gwen and Bridget were trying to deduce if one of their love interests wrote the romantic haiku for them. Gwen taking some jabs at Geoff for thinking he wouldn't even know what a haiku is, which in her defense, she was right.
Kinda like the ancient art of Japanese haiku?
What's a haiku?
These two were far from bitter enemies, though. One could think if Geoff's original role of Gwen's boyfriend was being replaced by Trent, then by extension, Geoff would then take the role of being one of Gwen's biggest enemies or rivals. Clearly not the case from any of these episodes, though. It wasn't until the 21st episode of the season where the dynamic between Gwen and Geoff would be explored more in depth. And while it doesn't seem to have been flat out confirmed by anyone working on the show, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the intent with this episode was meant to act as some kind of nod to the original plans with these two characters. The start of the episode shows various confessionals of their remaining final 6 and their time on the island so far, amongst other things. Gwen in particular pointing out her distaste for Geoff's personality for the first time officially, feeling like he's not only annoying but potentially fake because she feels like someone who's that happy all the time can't be genuine. Meanwhile, Geoff's confessional is the complete opposite. He has nothing bad to say about anybody and is simply stoked to have made it as far as he has. Obviously, we as the audience know he doesn't have any ill intentions towards his other competitors, but I really like how these confessionals highlighted how contrasting Gwen and Geoff's personalities were at the start. Gwen isn't necessarily bitter all the time, it's just one of those things where her experiences on the island molded her into being more bitter than usual. At her core, Gwen is one of the most normal contestants from the season 1 cast, but when she finds out she was lied to about where she'd be staying when she arrived, been through all these grilling challenges, unnecessary bullying from people like Heather, and getting pseudo-cheated on by the guy she liked, I get why she'd be acting this way. Most people in the real world would be. Her only close friend left was Lashana at this point. She can't fathom how Geoff could be so high-spirited, especially when he's been through the same challenges and lost his significant other to an elimination a few episodes prior. So naturally, when the challenge of being handcuffed to another contestant in order to complete 3 smaller challenges is announced, Gwen and Geoff would be one of the pairs to work together. I'd say this is one of my more favorite episodes from this season because of how good the character interactions were here. Not just from Gwen and Geoff, but from the other pairs too. Seeing Duncan act more vulnerable around someone other than Courtney, on top of the comedic moments between Owen and Heather, still hold up for me to this day. One of the rare instances where Owen actually crashed out on another character.
In which case Heather would say nothing ever! She is the meanest, the nastiest, the biggest cold-hearted meanie in all of Kalamazoo!
Of course, things aren't going very well with Gwen and Geoff either at first. Gwen is trying to get by in this challenge as quick as possible, while Geoff is being too laid back for her liking, not really taking the idea of winning the challenge all that seriously, and wanting to have more fun with it than anything. Geoff continues to try to make conversation with Gwen on their trip to the Boney Island part of the challenge, but to still no avail, where it continues to escalate further when Geoff starts taking pictures for memorabilia in the middle of the small statue hunt. Gwen completely loses her cool over this, throwing his camera into the ocean, and calls him out for trying to pretend to be her friend. In reality, Gwen was mostly rejecting Geoff as a person out of fear, seemingly because he reminded her of other guys back home who never gave her the time of day or invited her to any parties. Geoff reassures her that you don't need to have some kind of specific personality to enjoy partying, it's all about your mindset in the moment. This conversation was the start of Gwen warming up not only to Geoff, but warming up to the environment around her in general, actually having some fun with the challenge while still being able to put her best foot forward. Sometimes taking a task too seriously can actually be one's downfall, and being more positive can help, and Geoff was proof of that. Gwen even let loose a bit with some loud wahoos before leaving Boney Island. While these two were much more in sync now, their short and long-term memories became their downfall in the final challenge, resulting in Duncan and Lashana winning the challenge. Meaning Geoff was easy pickings to get voted off thanks to some meddling from Heather, and Duncan still holding a grudge against Geoff for not voting off Bridget with the rest of the guys' alliance. Gwen was beside herself at this outcome because of how nice Geoff is. She realized, wow, this is the nicest guy on the planet, what are you guys doing? But his niceness was still shining through even after this, taking his elimination in stride. But before leaving, Gwen runs after him to give him his camera back, saying she went back to Boney Island off screen because she really felt bad. And in the episode with the two of them taking a selfie together as a way to remember the good times they had that day. Look at the cute little fish in the picture, I always love that detail. Unfortunately, this would pretty much be the last time any kind of genuine interactions would take place between Gwen and Geoff. One thing in particular that always rubbed me the wrong way was in the season 1 finale confessionals, Gwen went over how the majority of the people who were competing against her were some kind of jerk, with Geoff being included as a part of this. Trent still being a part of that group was a bit understandable since he and Gwen didn't get a full chance of proper closure with the whole Heather two-timing situation, but it was clear as day that Gwen had warmed up to Jeff completely by the end of the Tri-Arm Triathlon episode. I remember even when I watched this episode as a young kid, that line about Jeff being a jerk came off as weird to me. And at that age, I'd usually not be bothered by the scenarios like that and would want the show to just, keep moving forward. But it damn near felt like a retcon of everything that happened in what I considered such a strong episode. From total drama action onwards, Jeff's role in the show would change pretty drastically for a decent bit, as his relationship with Bridget was a lot of the time reused for the same joke of them making out so much regardless of where they were or what was going on top of the two of them becoming the new host of the Total Drama Aftermath sideshow, which made him feel a bit disconnected from the rest of the cast at that point, as now with having this hosting job, he sort of became like a second Chris rather than being on the same level or close friends with the other main characters. Only Bridget was used for more genuine interactions for Jeff, and even then it was only sometimes, so by extension, the close friendship established with Gwen was also out the window and stayed that way for the rest of the following seasons since the two of them never competed in a season together again. All their interactions from here on out were pretty surface level, as if, Jeff was talking to a guest on a talk show. While the idea of the two of them ending up together could have been cool, like if Jeff ended up on the Gophers instead or Gwen fell for him anyway despite being on the Bass team, perhaps a scenario where Trent's guitar string snaps during practice for the talent show episode and Jeff is able to pop off on stage with his skateboard, followed by Heather talking about how Gwen likes guys who skate or something, just as an example. It's the fact that the show set up these two characters to have a close platonic friendship, only for their interactions to be borderline non-existent after the fact. Her interactions with Jeff in that episode were at least on par, if not better, than most of her screen time with Trent in my opinion. Maybe that's a hot take, but it is what it is. Platonic friendships between a guy and a girl is something I would have liked to see more in general in Total Drama. Revenge delved into it a little bit with Cameron and Zoe, while the reboot had Bowie and Emma. Pretty much every other instance of characters seemingly being platonic friends in Total Drama eventually turned into relationships. I.e. Gwen and Duncan from their interactions in Action, because they were really close while Gwen was still dating Trent, but then they become full-on couple status in World Tour. Or the best friends team of Carrie and Devin from Redonkulous Race. I think Gwen and Jeff not only had potential to be a better couple than Gwen and Trent, but even taking the platonic route had the potential to be one of the more entertaining / well-rounded duos in the entire series. It's a shame Gwen didn't get the chance to make a return in the Redonkulous Race like Jeff, Owen, and Noah, but at least we got to see Jeff return to form in a sense, with his personality and attitude towards other characters being more in line with season 1, as opposed to his reality TV host personality from Action and World Tour. At the end of the day, I'm self-aware enough to realize it's not that deep. Total Drama is still one of my favorite cartoon series of all time in spite of some of the glaring flaws it's had over the years, and honestly, the concept of Gwen not ending up with Jeff isn't inherently bad or anything either, it's really not. But when things played out the way they did with Trent and Duncan to the point where we got to All-Stars, they were like, yeah, fuck it, Cameron can have her. I can't help but wonder how things could have played out if her dynamic with Jeff was given more depth, whether it ended up being platonic or romantic. I'd be curious to know what you guys think in the comments, if this is something you would have liked to see explored in either of those two avenues, or if you're content with what we got in canon and why. I'd love to know your thoughts. Quick thanks to my gold tier patrons, BFP4, Izzytorium, Draconis, and Agender Fox. You guys' support really means the world to me. Don't be a stranger to leaving a like down below if you enjoyed the video and subscribing for more content like this in the future, but for now, I will see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, bye-bye.